catching bodies. Like, you got to be crazy.
Lil Jeff lived by one rule: strike first and make it brutal. Of all the things he did, this was among the most ruthless. A broad daylight execution, carried out without hesitation. No mask, no fear. Just a clear message to the streets. If you cross Lil Jeff, there's no warning, just bullets. This guy was not the type to let things slide. When someone from his side got killed, he made sure there was payback. And on May 13th, 2021, he did exactly that. It was a regular afternoon near East 79th Street in Chicago. The streets were busy. Cars rolled by, people stood around talking, and shops had customers going in and out. Nobody knew that a killing was about to happen. Lil Jeff had been watching Lil Gutta, real name Ronnie L. Sistrunk Jr.
Oh, he'd been watching him.
Gutta was moving like he had no enemies, walking through the city without a care. But his name had already been linked to Cruz murder a month earlier, and that was a serious problem.
Do your homework. Do your homework on your name linked to a body, and you walking around.
Lil Jeff knew his time was running out, but he still had something to say. Struggling to breathe, he turned to Q50, his closest ally, trying to get the words out. Though faint, the message was clear. This war wasn't over. Q50 took those last words to heart, making sure the feud that started with Jeff's chain snatching didn't end with his death. But looking back, none of this had to happen.
I begged him though. I swear to God, man, stay out here, gang.
If Jeff had just listened to a mentor who wanted him to stay back in California, he might still be here today. Lil Jeff's last message. The streets of Chicago never sleep, and for Lil Jeff and his right-hand man, Q50, that was a fact of life. The two were soldiers in the Bloodhounds, a crew locked in a brutal war with Trap City, a rival faction that had been flexing its muscle across the South Side. The feud wasn't just about territory or clout, it was personal. It all traced back to a single moment. Lil Jeff, a 22-year-old, known for his bold moves, snatching a chain off Trap City Carter's neck during a run-in and then flexing with it on the gram. That moment kicked off a back and forth that had both sides trading insults online and eventually bullets in the streets. By the summer of 2024, the tension was thick, with Jeff and his shadow Q50 at the forefront. Just like their lyrics, Jeff and Q50 lived the life. And on June 8, 2024, the duo alongside a third member took to the street when they got word that a Trap City guy was hanging out in a spot they couldn't ignore. Even though it was in enemy territory, Jeff and Q50 didn't mind. But that bravery or stupidity will eventually cost Jeff his life. Jeff rapped about shootouts, chasing down rivals, and making his mark on the city. And on June 8th, he was caught in the very scenario he had so often described in his songs. Leaked surveillance footage from that day paints a brutal picture. Jeff, Q50, and another shooter pulled up to South Rhodes Avenue, a territory Jeff had frequently mentioned in his music. The footage begins with Jeff jumping out of the car, gun in hand, and immediately targeting a man in bright yellow shorts, later identified as Man Man. As Man Man dodged behind a car and ran for cover into a house, Jeff followed, firing shots relentlessly. But then, everything changed in an instant. An unseen shooter inside the house fired back, catching Jeff off guard. He was struck and stumbled backward, collapsing at the foot of the porch. His enemies didn't hesitate. They unleashed a relentless barrage, hitting Jeff 19 times and emptying an entire magazine into his defenseless body. Q50 and the other shooter, still engaged in the gunfight, struggled to hold their ground. At one point, Q50 slipped and injured his ankle, yet he continued firing, even taking shots at a passing car. Some speculated that the driver was linked to Man Man, but the truth remains uncertain. Outnumbered and outgunned, Jeff's crew had no choice but to retreat. Recognizing that Jeff was beyond saving, the driver of their vehicle sped off. However, in an unexpected move, Q50 and the other shooter doubled back, braving enemy fire to retrieve Jeff's lifeless body. They rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late. Jeff had already taken his last breath in the car, with Q50 witnessing his final moments. By June 9th, the streets were buzzing with the news. Social media exploded with reactions. Twitter was ablaze. Reddit threads dissected every detail, and police scanners crackled with updates. But for Jeff's family and crew, this wasn't just another casualty in the never-ending war. It was deeply personal. Jeff's father took to Facebook in anguish, posting throwback pictures of his son with the caption, "The world." He didn't mince words, stating, "Let it be known, y'all didn't get him. He came trying to get y'all, and what happened, happened." But the saga continues. Clear the streets. While some criticized him for glorifying the violence, others sympathized with a grieving father who had lost his son to the harsh reality of the streets. As for Q50, mourning wasn't on his agenda. In a chilling social media post, he referred to Jeff as his brother and twin, promising to fulfill Jeff's final wishes, implying that revenge was inevitable. Those who knew Q50 understood that his threats weren't hollow. Yet the streets streets rarely listen to warnings until it's too late. Trap City, the set allegedly responsible for Jeff's murder, responded with utter disrespect. Instead of letting Jeff rest in peace, they escalated the feud. Members took to Instagram, posting videos reenacting Jeff's final moments, mocking his fall, pretending to be shot and yelling, "I'm hit! I'm hit!" Their comment sections were flooded with taunts, calling out Q50, accusing him of abandoning Jeff in the heat of the battle. However, what happened next shook the Trap City and the whole city of Chicago. Until this day, it's unknown if things were planned to go down that road or if the Bloodhounds took it that far because of the taunts.
You know, the fans be like, man, get their ass on the porch.
One of the people who featured prominently in the taunt video was identified as Trap City Carter, the same guy whose chain Jeff stole, which led to the war.
They call him 50 slide right here, man. That's what they call him slide now, man. He's slide. He's right there.
It appears the Bloodhounds and Q50 felt he was the perfect candidate to make an example of. The beef started with Jeff and Carter, and with Jeff gone, Carter had to follow. On October 19, 2024, marked the Bloodhounds' relentless retaliation. Trap City Carter was enjoying a quiet evening in Bronzeville, unaware that the Bloodhounds were ready to strike. At 8:41 p.m., two masked gunmen jumped out of a white car and opened fire. Carter barely had a moment to react before bullets tore through his chest, sending him to the ground. The shooters swiftly got back in the car and sped off, leaving no time for anyone to process the chaos. By the time paramedics arrived, Carter was barely holding on. Despite their best efforts, his injuries were fatal. He was rushed to UChicago Medical, but the doctors couldn't save him. The medical examiner later confirmed that Chevelle Trap City Carter had died. It didn't take long for the streets to point fingers. This wasn't a random attack, it was payback. While the city was still reeling from the loss, Q50 wasted no time celebrating. Hours after Carter's death, he posted on Instagram, "Now Lil Jeff and Lil Scoom can rest now." No one needed a detective to read between the lines. This was a claim of victory. But not everyone believed that the Bloodhounds were the ones who pulled the trigger. Trap City Taro quickly took to Instagram, firing back with a scathing rant. "On my dead brother, niggas ain't ever put in their own work. Remember that. Been needing help. And this not finna go well for none of y'all. LOL. Watch how it's croak." Taro made it clear he wasn't about to let this slide. The loss of Carter was devastating, but the Bloodhounds weren't done yet. Exactly 1 week later, as Carter was being laid to rest, tragedy struck again. On the day of the funeral, as the procession left St. Mark's Church, Carter's sister, Romisha Turner, was gunned down. Driving her white Jaguar SUV in the funeral convoy, she was suddenly ambushed by gunfire. The bullets ripped through her vehicle, causing her to crash into a house. By the time the police arrived, she was slumped over the wheel, lifeless, a victim of multiple gunshot wounds. A single shoe was found on the pavement, an eerie reminder of how fast life can be taken away. Romesha was rushed to UChicago Medicine Ingalls Memorial, but she didn't survive the attack. 2 deaths in 2 weeks. Trap City Carter and his sister both lost to the violence that ruled the streets. The city was left in shock, unsure whether to mourn or to celebrate what some saw as justice. Social media lit up with reactions, but one comment cut through the noise. "Murdered her brother, then murdered her at her brother's funeral. Another one of us killed by our own black man." No matter where people stood, the message was undeniable. The Bloodhounds weren't just getting revenge for Lil Jeff. They were sending a message that the war was far from over. Meanwhile, despite rumors of who was behind the attacks, whispers on the street pointed directly to Lil Jeff's right-hand man, Q50. Many believed he had orchestrated the deaths of Trap City Carter and his sister, further solidifying his position in the bloody cycle of retaliation. The death of Lil Jeff was an incident that rocked the whole city, not just because of who he was and what he represented, but also because of the way he died and the video of his gruesome murder that went viral. However, months after his death, it's been revealed that Jeff could have avoided getting killed and staying away from the beef altogether. How Lil Jeff could have escaped death. Weeks after the death of Lil Jeff, Rico Reckless has revealed he did his best to keep Jeff away from the violence that later took his life. In interviews and online posts, Rico, a seasoned rapper and figure in the rap scene, has opened up about his efforts to steer Jeff toward a different path. To Rico, Jeff wasn't just another young artist trying to break through, he was someone he cared about, a talent he believed in, before the streets and the internet took notice. Jeff's death in June 2024 hit Rico hard, leaving him to reflect on what might have been if Jeff had listened and stayed out of Chicago's crosshair. Rico and Jeff's relationship went back further than most realized. Rico, in his early 30s by 2024, had been around the block, making music, building a name, surviving the ups and downs of the streets. He first crossed paths with Jeff a couple of years earlier, around 2022, when Jeff was just 20 and starting to get serious about rapping.
That's my shorty. I've been on Bloodhound Lil Jeff since before the internet thought he was cool. I told him he was gonna be cool though, cause he had charisma. People liked him, cause he just was like little light skinned motherfucker. And like, you know, cause that one shorty, they just tall. So like people Lil Jeff, gang.
To Rico, Jeff stood out, not just for his flow, but for the way he carried himself. They clicked fast, and Rico took on a role he didn't always plan for. Part mentor, part big brother. Their bond wasn't just about music. Rico saw Jeff as family in a way, someone he wanted to protect from the same traps he'd seen claim others. Jeff, at 22 by mid-2024, was deep in the Bloodhounds, a crew locked in a growing feud with Trap City. That beef kicked off earlier that year when Jeff snatched a chain from Trap City Carter, a move that turned a personal slight into a full-on war. Rico knew where that road led. Diss tracks, social media taunts, and eventually gunfire. He didn't want Jeff to end up another name on a memorial t-shirt. I told him he could be big, Rico said. He didn't need all that other stuff. Rico saw a chance to pull Jeff out of the mess. Jeff had come out to California sometime in September, likely around the second or third week for what started as a short trip. Rico, who'd been spending more time on the West Coast to work on his own projects, invited Jeff to stay longer.
You should have saw how happy he was out here in Cali to be away from that environment. Like, the joy that was in his face. I still got videos on my phone. I can show you when we get. I can show you. Like, you could tell. Like,
California offered a break from the tension back home, where the Trap City feud was picking up steam. Rico showed Jeff a different way to move, less about street cred, more about building something lasting. Out there, Rico took Jeff around, introducing him to people in the music game. We'd go places, and folks knew me from my tracks or interviews. Rico said. Jeff was like, "How you know?"